All right, so we are on part 2 of chapter 1 of Beezus and Ramona, their very first book. And pretty much Beezus just finished reading to Ramona. And now Ramona's already being a pest again, bugging her when she said she would be quiet. All right, and we were talking about how mom and dad were so sick of all this behavior. So here we go. So only Beezus was left to read to Scoopy to Ramona. Plainly, something had to be done, and it was up to Beezus to do it. But what? Arguing with Ramona was a waste of time. So was appealing to her better nature. The best thing to do with Ramona, Beezus had learned, was to think up something to take place of whatever her mind was fixed upon. And what could take place of a little steam shovel? Another book, of course, a better book. And the place to find it? Certainly the library. Ramona, how would you like me to take you to the library to find a different book? Beezus asked. She really enjoyed taking Ramona places, which of course was quite different from wanting to go someplace herself and having Ramona insist on tagging along. For a moment, Ramona was undecided. Plainly, she was torn between wanting the little steam shovel read aloud again and the pleasure of going out with Beezus. Okay, she agreed at last. Get your sweater while I tell Mom, said Beezus. Clunk, clunk, shouted Ramona happily. When Ramona appeared with her sweater, Beezus stared at her in dismay. Oh no, she thought. She can't wear those to the library. On her head, Ramona wore a circle of cardboard with 2 long paper ears attached. The insides of the ears were colored with pink crayons, Ramona's work at nursery school. I'm the Easter Bunny, announced Ramona. Mother, wailed Beezus, you aren't going to let her wear those awful ears to the library. Why? I don't see why not. Mother sounded surprised that Beezus should object to Ramona's ears. They look so silly. Who ever heard of an Easter bunny in September? Beezus complained as Ramona hopped up and down to make her ears flop. So it's September, so it's about fallish, we know. I just hope we don't meet anyone we know, Beezus thought as they started out the front door. But the girls had no sooner left the house when they saw Mrs. Whistler, a lady who lived in the next block, coming toward them with a friend. It was too late to turn back. Mrs. Whistler had seen them and was waving. Why, hello there, Beatrice, Mrs. Whistler said when they met. I see you have a dear little bunny with you today. Yes. Beezus didn't know what else to say. Ramona objectively hopped up and down to make her ears flop. Mrs. Whistler said to her friend, as if Beezus and Ramona couldn't hear, Isn't she adorable? Both children knew whom Mrs. Whistler was talking about. If she had been talking about Beezus, she would have said something quite different. Such a nice girl. Probably. A sweet child. Adorable. Never. Just look at those eyes, said Mrs. Whistler. Ramona beamed. She knew whose eyes they were talking about. Beezus knew too, but she didn't care. Mother said blue eyes were just as pretty as brown. Mrs. Whistler leaned over to Ramona. What color are your eyes, sweetheart? She asked. Brown and white, said Ramona promptly. Brown and white eyes, exclaimed the friend. Isn't that cunning? Beezus had thought it was cunning the first time she heard Ramona say it, about a year ago. Since then, she had given up trying to explain to Ramona that she wasn't supposed to say she had brown and white eyes, because Ramona always answered, My eyes are brown and white. And Beezus had to admit that in a way they were. And what is a little bunny's name? Asked Mrs. Whistler's friend. My name is Ramona Gerald Quimby, answered Ramona, and then added generously, My sister's name is Beezus. Beezus? Exclaimed the lady. What an odd name. Is it French? "Oh no," said Beezus, wishing, as she so often did, that she had a more common nickname, like Betty or Patsy. She exclaimed as quickly as she could how she happened to be called Beezus. Ramona did not like to lose the attention of her audience. She hitched up the leg of her overalls and raised her knee. "See my scab?" she said proudly. "I fell down and hurt my knee, and it bled and bled." Ramona Beezus was horrified. "Oh my goodness. You aren't supposed to show people your scabs." "Why?" asked Ramona. That was one of the most exasperating things about Ramona. She never seemed to understand what she was supposed to do. "It's a very nice scab," said Mrs. Whisser's friend, but she did not look as if she really thought it was nice. There, see, Ramona showing her little scab off. "Well, we must be going," said Mrs. Whisser. "Goodbye." "Mrs. Whisser," said Beezus, politely, and hoped that they met anyone else they knew. She could somehow manage to hide Ramona behind a bush. "Bye-bye, Ramona," said Mrs. Whisser. "Goodbye," said Ramona, and Beezus knew that she felt like a girl who was 4 years old was too grown up to say bye-bye. Except for holding Ramona's hand crossing the street, Beezus lingered behind her the rest of the way to the library. She hoped that all the people who stopped and smiled at Ramona would not think that they were together. When they reached the Glenwood Branch Library, she said, "Ramona, wouldn't you like me to carry your ears for you now?" "No," said Ramona flatly. Inside the library, Beezus hurried Ramona into the boys and girls section and seated her on a little chair in front of the picture books. "See, Ramona," she whispered, "here's a book about ducks. Wouldn't you like that?" "No," said Ramona in a loud voice. Beezus's face turned red and with embarrassment when everyone in the library looked at Ramona's ears and smiled. "Shh," she whispered as Miss Griever, the grown-ups librarian, frowned in their direction. "You're supposed to speak quietly in the library." Beezus selected another book. "Look, Ramona, here's a funny story about a kitten that falls into a goldfish bowl. Wouldn't you like that?" "No," said Ramona in a loud whisper. "I want to find my own book." If only Miss Evans, the children's librarian, weren't there. She would know how to select a book for Ramona. Beezus noticed Miss Griever glance disapprovingly in their direction, while the other grown-ups watched Ramona and smiled. "All right, you can look," Beezus agreed to keep Ramona quiet. "I'll go find a book myself." When Beezus had selected her book, he returned to the picture book section where she found Ramona sitting on the bench with both arms clasped around a big flat book. "I found my book," she said, and held it up for Beezus to see. On the cover was a picture of a steam shovel with its jaws full of rocks. The title was Big Steve the Steam Shovel. "Oh, Ramona," whispered Beezus in dismay. "You don't want that book." "I do too," insisted Ramona, forgetting to whisper. "You told me I could pick out my own book." Under the disapproving stare of Miss Griever, Beezus gave up. Ramona was right. Beezus looked with distaste at the big orange-colored book in the stout library binding. At least it would be due in 2 weeks. But Beezus did not feel very happy at the thought of 2 more weeks of steam shovels, and it just went to show how Ramona always got her way. Beezus took her book to Ramona's to Miss Griever's desk. "Is this where you pay for books?" asked Ramona. "We don't have to pay for the books," said Beezus. "Are you going to charge them?" Ramona asked. Beezus pulled her librarian card out of her sweater pocket. I show this card to the lady, and she lets us keep the books for 2 weeks. A library isn't a store where you buy things. Ramona looked as if she did not understand. I want a card, she said. You have to be able to write your own name before you can have a library card, Beezus explained. I can write my name, said Ramona. Oh, Ramona, said Beezus, you can't either. Perhaps she really does know how to write her name, said Miss Griever, as she took a card out of her desk. Beezus watched it doubtfully while Miss Griever asked Ramona her name and age. Then the librarian asked what her father's occupation was. When Ramona didn't understand, she asked, What kind of work does your father do? He mows the lawn, said Ramona promptly. The librarian laughed. I mean, how does he earn his living? Somehow Beezus did not like to have Miss Griever laugh at her little sister. After all, how could Ramona be expected to know what her father did? He works for a specific gas and electric company, Beezus told the librarian. Miss Griever wrote this down on the card and shoved it across the desk to Ramona. Write your name on this line, she directed. Nothing daunted Ramona. Ramona grasped the pencil in her fist and began to write. She bore down so hard that the tip snapped off the lead, but she wrote on. When she laid down the pencil, Beezus picked up the card to see what had been written. The line on the card was filled with... Looks like a signature to me. That's my name, said Ramona proudly. That's just scribbling, Beezus told her. It is, too, my name, insisted Ramona. While Miss Griever quietly dropped the card into the wastebasket. I've watched you write, and I know how. Here, Ramona, you can hold my card. Beezus tried to be comforting. You can pretend it's yours. She looks exhausted with her little sister. All right, we'll finish the next chapter on the next video.